Is it good? Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to be part of the process. For the record, today is June 5th, 2025, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'll begin with the roll call. So, Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton,
Here.
Councilmember Stroop,
Here.
Roden,
Here.
Olvera,
Here.
Pearson, Parker,
Here.
and Swarig.
Here.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder, as a reminder to everybody who's joining us tonight, this meeting is live broadcast, and would like to welcome to everyone who is joining us here in the council chambers, and to all those who are joining us by live broadcast tonight. If there are individuals here in the room that do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting tonight, I'd ask that all comments made as part of the meeting, please use the microphone that's up here at the podium. The reason for that is if you speak from your chair, the individuals that are watching by live broadcasts won't be able to hear the comments that are being made. And in addition to that, when you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself. If you're a resident, whether you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not, or if you're with an organization as part of the meeting, just state which organization that you are here from. And with that, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. And we did have one individual that signed up to speak as part of citizens to be heard tonight, and Ms. Willoughby.
Hello, council, mayor, staff, members in the audience. My name is Carol Willoughby. I live in Fair Oaks Ranch in the Chartwell area. And I was going to address the flock system that's being built. I don't know when the city council formally agreed that we were going to be having this. I don't know when it was ever on a budget, if it was a budget item, if it was an agenda. I know there's some concerns about policies and rules of it. Is there a possibility for any abuse to be used on it? What is the cost to maintain them? Is that part of the contract? And if you add up the numbers, what is a 5-year contract going to cost us as far as the taxpayers? I know they're not going to be in use until 45 days, I guess. They're not in use right now. But I don't think it's a bad idea. I just can see how this could potentially get to where we're looking into things that maybe we don't have any business looking into. And I know it's just for the police department to use. I know it's for crime. We are one of the lowest crime areas in all of the state of Texas. We'd like to keep it that way. And I'm just gonna put the plug in, with the city center coming in and maybe having private events, that could increase our crime. So I do like the way that we want to protect our city. It's a great city. We all love it. And I'm glad that we're protecting it. But this just seems to be a little like Big Brother is watching. And I'm speaking on behalf of people who have asked me to come up here and speak. So it's not just me saying that.
Thank you, Ms. Willoughby. And good comments. And appreciate you being here tonight. Ms. Willoughby was the only one that signed up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Was there anybody else here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Burr. Which item? Okay. Anybody else? I do have 2 letters that were submitted and asked to be read as part of Citizens to be Heard, so I'll read those now. The first letter that I received is from Gary and Christine Graham, and they are Fair Oaks Ranch residents. And they write, "The Honorable Mayor, Maxton City Council members. On January 21st, 2025, we emailed each of you alternative sites for the community center. Mayor Maxton, at the State of the City address on January 30th, 2025, you announced one of the sites we had suggested, the abandoned Montessori School on Leslie Pfeiffer. This was still active, and staff were working with the owner, and the city had recently extended permits for a short period of time. There has been no activity at the Montessori School in the last 4 months. Not only is the Montessori School an eyesore, the entire development is a safety risk as the gates are flung open for anyone to access the property. The construction has now started for the gateway feature. What a lovely sight for everyone to see, to now include a rundown, abandoned buildings. Is this how you want Fair Oaks Ranch represented? A city that discourages commercial entities is going to let the commercial enterprise remain an eyesore in our beautiful community at our city's gateway. The city has a perfect opportunity to transform these abandoned buildings into a stellar community center at what we're sure would cost considerably less than the current $2.4 million you are now seeking. You would be doing the right thing for the citizens of Fair Oaks Ranch by turning an eyesore into a shining star. The historic Fair Foreman's home and Heritage Oaks would be saved while preserving the hill country aesthetics. Parking would no longer be an issue for the Chartwell community. You would set the example for other cities on how to repurpose abandoned buildings in a positive manner. The design of the community center could be reimagined and truly have an adaptable event spaces with smaller meeting rooms, as was claimed in the Fair Oaks Ranch January newsletter. This would have a positive impact on the city in which we live, a win-win for all residents. Again, we ask you, Mayor Maxton and City Council, to reconsider approving construction funding for the community center at the city campus. You have the power to make a better choice. Signed, Gary and Christine Graham, Fair Oaks Ranch residents. And the second letter that I received is from Patricia Altamore, and she is also a Fair Oaks Ranch resident. And then she writes, Mayor Maxton, City Council members, and Mr. Husengay, as you are all aware, there have been unresolved issues regarding the building of a community center at the corner of the city campus. The main issues are as follows. A 5,000 square foot building that can seat up to 200 guests will create a traffic nightmare with numerous vehicles entering and exiting the area. There still appears to be inadequate parking for a large number of vehicles. Next point, there is no security or monitoring when events are held. I was told that there would not be a police officer available to monitor the center or to handle problems during the evenings. And our next point, use of the center could potentially open the city to litigation on the part of guests. Are the citizens to assume that the city willing to take this risk? Next point, surrounding homes, including those on Saddle Song, will be subjected to more noise, light, etc. than is currently experienced due to structures at this location. I can personally attest to the fact that voices from the parking lot, slamming car doors, honking, sirens, etc. are already heard at my residence. Our next point, we have been designated a Tree City USA for a second year. Construction on this corner will damage and put in jeopardy beautiful heritage oaks that cannot be replaced. And our next point, a congested city campus will be costly to maintain, to insure, etc. And the burden is to fall on taxpayers. I was told that taxpayers weren't allowed to reference a center since no tax dollars were being used. MDD funds are tax dollars, and now tax dollars are to be used. Our next point, since the country club is no longer renting event space, does this mean that we are to put up with events for years to come? The country club allows alcohol use, music. If we do not allow this, who will monitor? Her last point, I recently asked for a town hall for the purpose of having a real discussion regarding pros and cons of having a center, but was basically told no. This could all be a non-issue with either a much smaller building that was only used for municipal purposes, no events, or if this large structure was built at a more suitable location, i.e. one that is not located next to an elementary school and residential areas. And signed, thank you, Tricia Altamore. And with that, we'll move on to our presentation items tonight. And we have one presentation. And Jim Williams, our Assistant City Manager, will do this, which is recognition of Joanna Merrill, Director of Human Resources, for receiving the TMHRA Lone or Almost Lone Ranger of the Year Award.
Come on down, Joanna, front and center. Well, Mayor, City Council, Jim Williams, Assistant City Manager, thanks to everyone in attendance for witnessing this. The City of Fair Oaks Ranch proudly announces that Joanna Merrill, Director of Human Resources, has been awarded the 2025 TMHRA Lone or Almost a Lone Ranger Award. Presented by the Texas Municipal Human Resources Association, this honor recognizes HR professionals in small cities making a big impact. Joanna's achievements, there's a long list of them, but in the interest of time, I'll summarize it. Includes modernizing the personnel policy manual, leading a citywide compensation study, transforming city communications, and a load of other stuff. Her innovative leadership continues to enhance employee well-being, engagement, and organizational success here at Fair Oaks Ranch, not to mention keeping up with the recent trend and tradition of our staff being recognized as the best of the best in municipal government across the state of Texas. So, Joanna, congratulations on your achievement and the positive light that this reflects on you and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And we got this beautiful.
Wow.
Back to our duties.
Thank you, Jim. With council's approval, I would like to make an adjustment to the agenda that we have before us tonight. We have the CIAC semi-annual report, which is at the end of the agenda, and I would like to move that up till now. And following it, I'd like to go, we have an executive session item, and I would also like to move the executive session up right after we do the CIAC report, if everybody agrees. Any problems? Okay. Then with that, we'll move on to one of our report items from staff, which is item number 23 on the agenda, the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee Semi-Annual Report and Impact Fee Recommendations. And on the report, it does say Paul Mabin was going to present the report, but I believe he couldn't make it tonight, so Grant is filling in for him.
That's correct, Mayor. Thank you very much. Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director for the city, and Paul does send his regrets that he wasn't able to make it tonight. He does normally present these semi-annual reports in person. This report largely covers the impact fees that we will hear in more detail later tonight. The CIAC does make several recommendations, and I'll mention them really quickly. The first recommendation specifically said that the CIAC finds that the proposed updates to the land use assumptions and capital improvement plans are based on sound assumptions, including more realistic growth projections than assumed in the past plans and reports. Secondly, the CIAC finds that Friesen Nichols used sound engineering practices and complied with the requirements under the code in their calculations of the maximum allowable impact fees. And then lastly, the CIAC recommends that the City Council adopt the maximum allowable impact fees as calculated by Friesen Nichols. Accordingly, those following impact fee changes were recommended. For the water impact fee, an increase from the current $8,670 to $21,013. And for the wastewater impact fee, an increase from the current $6,069 to $9,943. And this report was signed by Paul Mabin, CIAC chairperson.
Any, any questions from council? We do have an item later on as part of our consideration to look at the impact fees, so. Okay, thanks,
Thank you,
Grant.
Mayor.
And I'll apologize to everyone that is here with us tonight and those that are joining us by the live broadcast. But we did need to move the executive session up to the current time. And City Council will go into executive session pursuant to Section 551.101 of the Open Meetings Act. Under the Texas Government Code, a quorum of the governing body hereby convenes in a closed session. The City Council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072, deliberations regarding real property, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property for the potential future location of municipal facilities. And for the executive session, I will need the council, the city manager, and the city attorney. And everybody else I'll ask to leave the room. I anticipate that this executive session will take us between 30 and 45 minutes. And then we'll reconvene after that. Christine, I have the time now is 6:47, and we are moving into executive session. We're up. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. I have the time now is 7:27, and we are back in open session. During the time frame that we were at executive session, there were no actions taken that required a consideration back in open session. That will move on to our consent agenda tonight. We have 6 items on the consent agenda. First, approval of the corrected May 1st, 2025 City Council meeting minutes. 2, approval of the May 13th, 2025 Special City Council meeting minutes, canvassing the election. 3rd, approval of the May 13th, 2025 Special City Council open house minutes. 4th, approval of the May 15th, 2025 regular City Council meeting minutes. 5th, approval of the May 20th, 2025 regular City Council meeting minutes. And last, approval of a resolution authorizing the transfer of K-9 Officer Buddy. Is there any council member that would like to remove any of the items from consent to consideration? Then could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Scott for the motion and Ruben for the second. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. With that, we'll move on to, we do have a public hearing for tonight's council meeting. Related to the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, City Council will conduct a public hearing to receive public testimony on proposed amendments to the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Appendix A Fee Schedule, Article A 2.000 Building Fees. And Christina, I have the time now is 7:29, and I'm opening the public hearing. And I will turn it over to Scott.
Good evening to the City Council, the Mayor, City staff, and all present. I hope all are well. My name is Scott Davis, and I'm the building official. I'm here today to discuss the Building Department's proposed amendments to its fee schedule. The fee schedule was last updated in 2019. Updating the schedule will align with Priority 1.4 of the Strategic Action Plan, which emphasized maintaining high-quality municipal services through sound fiscal management. Additionally, the proposed changes adhere to Chapter 3, Section 3.01005H2 of the Code of Ordinances, which is to structure permit fees to cover the actual costs associated with administrating this chapter. To determine the proposed fee adjustments, the Building Department used the formula recommended by the International Code Council based on the August 2024 Building Valuation Data publication. This formula resulted in a 16% increase, which forms the basis for the proposed changes. Specifically, we propose a 16% increase across all general building permit fees. While most fees reflect this 16% adjustment, a few, such as the miscellaneous permit fee, the fence permit fee, and the reinspection fee, show a 20% increase. This is due to fees being a flat rate fee instead of a fee based on square footage. We also increased the driveway approach fee from $50 to $120 to reflect the implementation of new design and construction standards and additional inspection times required. Additionally, we added 2 items, an electric vehicle charger and generator, to our existing $5 per fixture fee list. For pool permits, the ICC-based calculation suggested a fee of $665. However, we recommend rounding this to $500 to better align with fees in comparable cities such as Chavano Park, Prosper, Helotes, Cibolo, Schertz, and Bernie, while remaining competitive with the regional range. Furthermore, a discrepancy was identified between the Code of Ordinances and the fee schedule in Appendix A regarding the penalty for occupying a residency without a certificate of occupancy. The code specifies a $600 penalty, while the fee schedule lists it at $200. The department proposes correcting the fee schedule to reflect the $600 penalty as stated in the Code of Ordinances. This concludes the presentation. Thank you.
And do we have anybody here tonight that would like to make any comments, reference the change to the fee schedule? All right, I have the time now is 7:33, and I'm closing the public hearing. Any questions from council?
Does the, if we implement these fees, does that pretty much cover our cost of our inspection department all in? Do we, or the bulk of it?
That is the intent. I'll defer most of that back to Scott where we are now, but for, I know that for the last 3 years, I believe, 2 years, we've been, our expenditures have been higher than our revenues, whereas that historically has not been the case. So the intent is to get at least back to even with these changes.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. Then we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. And the first consideration item is the consideration and possible action approving the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Fee Schedule, Article A2.000, Building Fees. And Scott, anything else you need to add, or
No, sir?
covered it all in the
We
first?
covered it all in the first one.
All right. Any further questions from council? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then from council, can I get a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Fee Schedule, Article A2.000, Building Fees? Jonathan?
Yeah.
And a second?
Second.
Dale? And any other discussion from council? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
I will move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is consideration and approval of a resolution by the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, authorizing and approving publication of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation, complying with the requirement contained in the Securities and Exchange Commission's Rule 15C2-12 and providing an effective date. And Summer, you gonna lead us through this one?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So tonight, we are seeking your approval of a resolution authorizing the publication of a notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation in an amount not to exceed $9,545,000 to fund water, wastewater, and drainage capital improvement projects. Now, this step complies with the requirements in Local Government Code, Chapter 271, but it does not obligate the city to proceed with the issuance or at that full amount. Timing of this notice allows for the sale of COs to occur in August to fund projects in the fiscal year 25-26 proposed capital budget. And posting in the paper provides transparency to the public, as the issuance is subject to petition by the registered voters of the city. So if a petition is submitted by 5% of the qualified voters, then the issuance of COs is paused until a bond election can be called and held. Now, staff is proposing to fund 9 drainage projects totaling $1.6 million and 8 utility projects totaling $15.59 million. These projects reflect the council-adopted capital improvement plans and address infrastructure needs critical to public service delivery. So these projects align with the previously adopted CIPs in addition to 2 new projects that the Director of Public Works will introduce. Proposed funding is a combination of cash and debt, with debt issuances financed over 20 years. and the projects have been phased in over a 5-year term, so many of them are already in process. But to recap available funding sources, so the Utility Capital Reserve Fee supports cash funding projects. The utility impact fees support only those eligible projects and their financing costs, and then there's the issuance of debt. COs are recommended as the funding source because they allow the city to finance multiple projects with different sources of repayment together to create economies of scale and reduce issuance costs. So while COs are backed by the full taxing authority of the city, which provides for a lower interest rate than revenue bonds, the repayment of debt for water projects would be paid through water revenues. Debt for wastewater projects is repaid with wastewater revenues, and the debt for drainage would be funded through an ad valorem tax levy. Now, the water CIP makes up the largest portion of the proposed CO issuance. Many of the projects started prior to this current fiscal year, and for this fiscal year 25, we issued COs last September to cover the $3.19 million project costs. For fiscal year 26, the project costs total $6.89 million for the continuation of projects and 2 new projects, a water line on Dietz Elkhorn and a GBRA water main extension. So I'll turn it over to the Director of Public Works and Engineering to introduce those 2 projects.
Thank you, Summer. I'm Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director. The first new project is the Dietz Elkhorn Road water line. This project extends constructs a new 12-inch water main along Dietz Elkhorn from the Elmo Davis water plant to the eastern side of the city, a distance of approximately 1 mile. There are several future CIP projects identified in the city's water, wastewater, and reuse master plan to extend water infrastructure to the east side, and this project is being pulled forward to align with the Dietz Elkhorn East Road reconstruction project to avoid trenching through the new road to install the water line at a later date. Back on May 1st, the City Council did approve a utility service agreement with the developer for the Corley tract to share the cost of this project, which is sized to serve not only the Corley tract, but other developments in the area. The project is estimated to cost a total of about $2 million, of which the city's share is 75%, or estimated at $1.5 million. The second new project is the GBRA water main extension. On the map to the right, you can see the existing GBRA water main that runs east to west along Ammon Road. It's kind of shown there in dark blue. To the left, it curves around Rolling Acres Trail and delivers purchased water to our Plant 5, as well as the city of Boerne. On that same map, you can see the proposed extension running north-south along Ammon Road. It's in light blue, leading to the 10-acre site where Boerne's future water plant and our city's elevated storage tank will co-located. This project enables the future receipt and distribution of purchased water directly to the northeast portion of the city where much of our future growth is anticipated. Right now, when purchased water is received at Plant 5, it must be pumped through miles and miles of pipeline to get it back to the northeast area. Since this project will benefit both the city of Boerne and the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, an interlocal agreement or cost-sharing arrangement between our cities is anticipated. The project is estimated to cost somewhere in the range of $2 to $2.5 million, of which our city's estimated share is about $750,000. City staff will be meeting with the city of Boerne in the near future to discuss the proposed cost share in more detail, so this number is subject to change. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Summer.
All right, so the wastewater CIP contains 3 projects: the wastewater treatment plant Phase 1 expansion, which is in process, the installation of a sewer line and decommissioning the Falls Lift Station, and the Kojak Circle manhole and sewer upgrade that we budgeted for this current fiscal year, and it was included in the debt issuance last September. Now, that Kojak Circle project will now be funded by a developer that was arranged in a utility service agreement the city entered into. So I have zeroed out that project, and those funds will be transferred to another wastewater project essentially decreasing the amount of COs to be issued this year. With this proposed debt issuance, the water and wastewater debt service fee charged to utility customers will not materially change for fiscal year 25-26. You may recall that we structured the debt repayment schedules in a way that would provide stability in that debt service fee so that customers would not have as large of an increase in any given year. The debt service fee is recalculated each fiscal year by dividing the debt service requirement for that fiscal year by the number of connections on July 1st. So the water debt service fee is estimated to increase from $23.85 per month to $23.89. That's a total increase of 48 cents for the year. And the wastewater debt service fee is estimated to decrease from $17.03 to $16.91 per month, or a total decrease of $1.08 next year. And as you can see, the estimated changes in the subsequent years is also minimal. Now lastly, the drainage CIP contains 11 projects in total. However, only 9 projects remain unfunded, totaling $1.61 million over the next 4 years. Only 2 projects are scheduled for fiscal year 25-26, totaling almost $325,000, and those are the completion of project number 2 and 4, both on Rolling Acres Trail. During the 2 workshops held where I presented the 5-year financial plan, there was much discussion on cash funding versus debt funding the drainage CIP. The general fund is projected to have $2.5 million in unassigned fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, so cash funding is still an option. However, as we saw with that financial plan, the increased cost of providing services over the 5 years will result in increases in the maintenance and operating tax rate that may get as high or higher than the voter approval rate. So staff does recommend using debt to fund the drainage capital improvement plan, as these projects are capital in nature and restore essential infrastructure to a condition that extends its useful life. Financing the cost over time aligns with the long-term benefits the improvements provide. Once rehabilitated, the infrastructure will be maintained routinely, helping prevent the need for similar large-scale investments in the future. This approach also allows the city to preserve unassigned fund balance to support the operating budget and help stabilize the tax rate over the next 5 years. So in summary, last September, the city issued COs totaling $3.7 million for water and wastewater projects, anticipating 2 more issuances for those projects to be completed. For your consideration tonight is a resolution authorizing the publication of a notice of intention to issue $9.5 million in COs for water, wastewater, and drainage projects. Again, this publication does not obligate the city to issue the full amount, but it gives the city council flexibility to consider debt funding the drainage capital improvement projects. If approved, the notice will post for 2 weeks while staff begins preparing information for Samco Capital and schedules a ratings call with S&P Global Ratings. A notice of sale would post in the July 20 timeframe, so council would have until then to decide exactly what amount to issue. That concludes the presentation. I'm available for questions, and in attendance is Jack McLiney from Samco Capital if you have specific questions on this publication or the issuance process.
Any questions?
I would like to say that, you went over when we talked about debt funding or cash funding these drainage products, and when you said last time, if we cash fund it, we're forcing the residents here now to fund all of it. And if we debt fund it, some of the future residents that will actually use these projects will then be paying their fair share. So I want to thank you for pointing that out. That really clicked with me.
Anybody else? Some other quick questions. Well, 2. So we talked about 9.4, whatever it was, total amount.
Yeah, $9,545,000.
So the notice of intent that we're looking to approve tonight, or looking for approval tonight, would authorize that we could go forward for that amount.
Up to that amount,
Up
yes.
to that amount. That's a good way to put it. So, and then it doesn't mean that we have to draw that full amount. And you mentioned that it would be sometime in July is that the first time that we'd be able to draw on it? We could wait till later. So what I'm really looking at is how we tie it to the budget. And could we wait till September, October timeframe until we make a determination? Or does it have to be made before then?
So we've timed it so that way the funds would be available at the start of the new fiscal year, since that's when the projects would be continuing or some starting.
Okay.
So we would want the funds available at the beginning of the fiscal year. To do that, we would post a notice of sale in mid to late July. So that's really the point that we would need to know definitively how much of COs we would want to issue.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then can I get a motion from council that the city council adopt a resolution authorizing and approving publication of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation?
So moved.
Keith, in a second. Jonathan? Any other discussion from council? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
We'll move on to our third consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution directing the city manager to submit amendment to the Chapter 377 project funding agreement between the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Development District and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch to include the full construction cost for the community center project and authorizing execution of all applicable documents by the city manager.
Mayor, before we get the presentation from Kelsey, I would like to make a motion. I still have a lot of unanswered questions about this project and uneasiness about it, and I would like to make a motion to postpone this item.
So we have a motion to postpone this item indefinitely.
Definitely.
I second it.
Okay. Motion was from Emily, and second was from Keith. I don't know, any other comments or questions from council?
This is in line with what I'm thinking too. I mean, we've heard from the residents. It seems like everybody's pretty sure that there's a better deal out there somewhere. So yeah, I'm not opposed to this at all.
So based on this, I'm not sure, well, we'll see if the motion passes. But we did have two residents that did sign up to speak as part of this item. Ms. Willoughby, did you still want to provide comments? And Ms. Brimhall, after she's completed, if you'd still like to provide comments.
Well, I don't know whether I should cry, because I have, feel like we've been heard as citizens, and I thank you, thank you, thank you. But a couple of little things I wanted to just brief you on was, I'm a little confused about the MDD and the requirements for the projects on the, I looked over the packet that was sent out, and on page 78 of the packet, the whereases, it's talks about the contract that was being presented to the city council and kind of what was going to be included in that MDD funding. The first one I had a question is that it says whereas, and the number 2 whereas on page 78 was to add approximately 3,000 to 4,000 square feet of flexible and highly functional meeting and event space built on property owned by the city to include public meeting space, conference rooms, and a kitchen, and blah, blah, blah. So that's not what we're building. And then the fourth whereas was the purposes of the project is to create a welcoming, flexible gathering space for private and public events, for community programs, private and public meetings, city staff, blah, 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 blah. And I'm a little confused on, is that private still on the table? So the purpose of it and just the physical, how big it's gonna be, I'm wondering where are we on this contract? Seems to me like the whole contract needs to be rewritten to the MDD because it's got a lot of errors in it other than just the price. But I'm not a city person. I don't claim to be, but just through looking at it, those were my questions. Why is it saying this is what the project is, and this is not what the project is, has developed to be? And then the cost of the taxpayers, because there's some heavy costs in there. I feel like at least $750,000 the taxpayers are gonna have to assume. It's not gonna come out of MDD because it can't. And so that's laid on us as well as the maintenance for a building this big. As a citizen of Fair Oaks Ranch, do I see the need to have a room bigger than this for us to meet in? Yes. Do I see a need to have a room bigger than this and for us to vote in? Yes. But our problem with the citizens that I know that have come to me through the last year and a half that we've been doing this is the size of the building or the location of the building. If there's some flexibility in that, that would be great. I do like the way that their negotiations brought down the cost. But it's just like I've said to someone else earlier today, the monies are there, but is this really the wisest place to spend it? The wisest project to spend it on? Is there a way we could trim it down? For future projects, would more land help us? I don't know about that, the land that the tower's being, 10 acres. Is there any room there? I mean, I don't know how that works. Is there a chance that 10 acres seems to be a lot? And as a realtor, I know that. Do we have to have the 10 acres only for a tower? Is that a law in the state of Texas or the county or something? Or is there room there, since the city will be owning that land, that we could carve out some room there? And in the future, maybe even annex for office space. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I just point out that, Ms. Willoughby, what you were reading on page 78 was the original MDD grant, not the current one. That's so things have changed, I believe, since that time, so it's still consistent with that.
Yeah, but it was in the packet, so that's why I didn't know.
Well,
It
we
was in
have the
that packet that
agreements.
got sent
We
out.
include all the agreements from the past in the packet. 'Cause if
So
you're-
the present packet was in there too? The present contract is in there and I just overlooked it?
It should have been, yeah.
Okay. Well, I must have overlooked it because that's the only one that I could come up with. And it was like, wow, there's a lot of things wrong in here. Maybe the whole thing needs to be rewritten.
Maybe Scott, you could comment?
Yes, like you said, Councilman, the agreements are on page 78 is Exhibit C of this agenda item. That's the original agreement from 2020.
Right.
Exhibit B in this packet is the current agreement, which was dated 2023. And what this
And then, so
motion,
the only amendment needed was just the cost.
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Good question.
Ms. Brimhall, did you still want to make comments also?
Good evening. Sharon Brimhall, I live on Fair Oaks Parkway. Good to see everybody. And I just want to make sure, did I hear right, Emily, that you made a motion to postpone this trip to the MDD indefinitely? Did I hear that right?
Heard that right.
That's amazing. Thank you, hallelujah, Lord. Yeah, thank you, really, thank you. Because there have been many unanswered questions over the last 6 years, and I know some residents, and y'all have been very patient, council members and mayor, to meet with us many times in the last year. I appreciate your patience in doing that, but we felt like our legitimate concerns and questions that were quite common sense were not being addressed. So this is just amazing, because I pray that y'all will go back to the original idea, which your first idea is sometimes the best. Go back over and think about fixing up that lovely ranch-style old police building for a nice council chamber. If we need more meeting space later, there are many wonderful alternative locations in town. In fact, I think I wrote it down. Over there by the blighted Montessori property on Leslie Pfeiffer, right across the street, there is a house at 28337 Leslie Pfeiffer. It's on the other side from Montessori. It's on 2.42 acres. It's a 2,1100 square foot building, totally updated from floor to ceiling on the inside. I don't know why it's been on the market for over 200 days, but they say they're asking $675,000 for it. And for whatever reason, if that's a fact, and you could pick up 2.42 acres for that price, I think the city ought to consider MDD funds can buy property for the future, because this house, I think, was built in '79, so a lot of those houses on Leslie Pfeiffer and Bingley are old. But if possible, as those places come up for sale, I think the city would be very wise to buy them, because Leslie Pfeiffer, with more traffic in there and all that, is not really gonna stay a very residential road. It's a cut-through road, and then we know what cut-through roads are like. Okay, so that's just a thought. And then somebody else mentioned that maybe the 5 acres over behind Fisher's is for sale too. That would be great right on Dietz Elkhorn if you wanted some more meeting space. But here's what I wrote to a neighbor the other day, kind of what I was thinking. Our Fair Oaks Ranch city campus is lovely. It is, with matching vintage buildings and priceless heritage oak trees that cannot be replaced. The city campus embodies the very essence of our quaint semi-rural city, aptly named Fair Oaks Ranch. Many residents have concerns that a brand-new 5,300 square foot structure will overpower City Hall and the 4-Hop buildings and destroy the charm of the city campus. We know we need nice council chambers and space for voting and committee meetings, a place for residents to interact with government. But I think the renovation of the old building is still the most common sense and least expensive solution. A civic center is great, but this location is not suitable for it. Another location in the city would be much better. And you're talking about the water tower property, 10 acres? I think it's the Crown Ridge Event Center, Civic Center, that's right there on Camp Bullis. It's lovely, and it has a huge parking lot, but there is in the middle, well, on the side of the parking lot, one of those huge electric towers. You know, but they utilize the land anyway, so, you know, that's a possibility, I guess. I mean, there's still, you don't hardly notice it's so tall, but anyway, I thank y'all and appreciate it, maybe taking another look at the possibilities that are out there. And actually the thought of having this area under construction for a whole year, totally disrupting our whole city campus, didn't sound really good, actually. I don't even know where the room will be for like cement trucks to get in here or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But to have the whole campus destroyed for a year doesn't make sense either. I'm sorry. You could renovate that building much quieter and quicker. So thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Common sense has returned. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has any comments that would like to speak on this item? For council, we do have a motion on the table for indefinite postponement. Is there any other discussion from council?
Like where we're at?
A motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved, and the item is postponed indefinitely, and no need to present.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our fourth consideration item tonight, which is a consideration and the possible action approving a resolution setting a public hearing date for proposed amendments to land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and water and wastewater impact fees. And Grant, you're going to kick this off?
Yes,
and-
Mayor. Thank
Okay.
you. Again, Grant Watanabe, Public Works Director for the city. Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 395 requires cities and other political subdivisions imposing an impact fee to update their land use assumptions and capital improvement plan at least every 5 years. The city's water and wastewater impact fees were last updated and adopted in March of 2020 and therefore are due for an update this year. In September of last year, the City Council approved a resolution authorizing an execution of a work authorization with Friesen Nichols to conduct a water and wastewater impact fee update. Friesen Nichols developed the city's water, wastewater, and reuse master plan and has conducted the city's last few impact fee updates. They're also very familiar with our city's water and wastewater systems and future infrastructure requirements. This process requires a public hearing on proposed amendments to the city's land use assumptions, capital improvement plan, and impact fees prior to adoption. Following our impact fee presentation, there is a resolution to set the public hearing for consideration. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jessica Vassar from Friesen Nichols. She's going to help walk us through the impact fee update and also provide a comparison with other benchmark cities.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Jessica Vassar with Friesen Nichols. I know that a lot of y'all were not with us the last time we did impact fees, so I will kind of give you an overview of the process and a little bit about why we charge impact fees and what they're used for. Looking at the impact fee process, like Grant mentioned, it is governed under Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code, and that requires us to develop land use assumptions, have a capital improvements plan, conduct impact fee calculations, meet with our stakeholders, which is our Capital Improvements Advisory Committee throughout the process. We've met with them twice on March 20th and April 8th. And then finally, to approve and adopt the impact fee ordinance. So impact fees are a one-time fee that are charged to new development to help fund infrastructure associated with that growth. So this is not a fee that's going to be charged to our existing citizens, our existing ratepayers, taxpayers. It's only for new growth that is coming to the city, new homes, new businesses that are going to be built here. And with impact fees, this allows for development to pay for a portion of the infrastructure that's associated with growth. And if we don't have impact fees in place, then the burden of that infrastructure falls on your existing taxpayers and ratepayers. This is a look at the impact fee equation, and we're going to look at this again later in the presentation. But what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the eligible cost for our impact fee CIP, and that's going to be the numerator of our equation, and then the denominator of our equation is going to be our growth in service units. So we'll get to this and we'll get to the calculations later in the presentation, although I know you've already seen the bottom line earlier in the meeting. First thing we want to do is define our service areas. So we have our water service area on the left, it's shown in blue, and our wastewater service area on the right, shown in green. We also have to have future land use assumptions for a 10-year period. Chapter 395 requires that we look at this over a 10-year period. Grant said we update it every 5 years, but the study is over 10 years. So this is the future land use plan that's adopted by the city in the comprehensive plan. And not only is it important to know what type of growth we're going to have, but we also need to know where that growth is going to be located. So we worked very closely with city staff to identify areas for future development over the next 10 years. So on these maps, the red parcels are parcels that are already developed. The blue parcels are parcels that we anticipate growth in the next 10 years. And the green parcels are parcels that are going to be beyond the 10-year window in build out. And so this is kind of where we're anticipating our growth. And this growth is equivalent to a 2% annual growth rate for your water system. So that's also consistent with the numbers that we were just looking at with your budget numbers and thinking about bonds. And this was actually a recommendation of the advisory committee. Originally, when we came to them, we had a higher growth rate, and they recommended that we reduce it to 2%. So these numbers are in alignment with the recommendations of the committee. This is just a summary of the numbers based on how many connections we're going to be adding over the next 10 years. We also take those connections and we project out our water demand. So we're looking at our average day water demands, maximum day, maybe a day like today in the summer when the system is stressed, people are watering their lawns, and we're using a lot of water. That's your maximum day. And then our peak hour demand, which is the single hour on your maximum day when your system is the most stressed. And these are all different requirements we look at when we're designing water lines and tanks and pumps to be sure that we're able to meet our system demands over all the different times of the year. We also develop wastewater flow projections. We have our average annual daily flow, which is used for sizing our treatment plants, and then our peak wet weather flow, which is what we use to size our interceptors and lift stations. So this is our impact fee CIP map, and it is a little difficult to see on the screen. I have hard copies of it if anybody wants to look at it in a lot of detail. It is consistent with the impact fee, or the CIP that was adopted in the master plan with the addition of the projects that Grant presented earlier in the meeting. And what we see on this map is we have both orange projects, which are projects that are already built that still have capacity to serve growth, so we can continue to include those in the calculation. And then we have red projects shown here that are proposed projects that are going to be built over the next 10 years to serve that growth that we showed. Does anybody have any questions on the CIP? We've got water lines, tanks, pump station expansions. And then on the wastewater CIP, on this one, we only have red projects that are proposed projects and that are going to be built in the next 10 years. And we do have a pretty reduced list here. We've got an expansion at the plant that's already been proposed. We have interceptor improvements to serve new growth. And we have the addition of the decommissioning of the Falls Lift Station with the interceptor that will serve that area. So this is coming back to our equation. We've kind of looked at our land use assumptions now, the CIP, and now we're going to get into the calculations. So we're going to look at how we calculate the eligible cost, and we're going to look at how we also calculate the growth in service units over the next 10 years. So what we have here is a list of all the different meter sizes that could be utilized by the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. And the majority of homes in Fair Oaks Ranch are served by a 3/4 inch meter. And the American Water Works Association, AWWA, says that the maximum flow rate for a 3/4 inch meter is 25 gallons per minute. And that has a service unit or living unit equivalent of 1. If we come down to a 1.5 inch meter, that has a maximum flow rate of 50. So it can pass 2 times the amount of flow of a 3/4 inch meter, and therefore it has a living unit equivalent of 2. So that's kind of, we do that for all the different meter sizes. And we use that to convert them all back to the equivalent of a single family home. So looking at this this table here, what we've got is our existing number of meters in 2025. Currently, we have 3,255 meters. And then we convert those by multiplying them by the living unit equivalents to come up with how many total LUEs we have right now. And then based on our growth rate, the 2% annual growth rate over the next 10 years, we estimate that by 2035, we'll have 3,968 meters. And what we're looking at here is the delta in the living unit equivalent. So how many living unit equivalents are we adding over the next 10 years? And that's going to be 758. That's going to be the denominator of our equation for water. We went through the same exercise for wastewater. It's a little bit different. Obviously, we have some septic customers. So the denominator on the wastewater equation is going to be 412 new LUEs added over the next 10 years. Okay. This slide has a lot of numbers, but what I want to show you here is not to go through every single number and every single line. But what we did here is we went through every single project that we identified on your CIP, and we looked at how much of this project is serving customers that are already here. So if you, do I have a pointer? Yeah. So right here, these numbers, the 2025 numbers, not all of those numbers are 0, because a lot of these projects benefit the existing customers that are already living here. And so that portion of the project is not eligible for impact fees. And then we calculated in 10 years how much of that project will be utilized. And not all of them go to 100% because we're not going to be fully built out in the 10-year window. So we calculate how much of each project is being utilized and multiply it by our capital cost and our financing cost, which is calculated using a 5% interest rate over a 20-year term. And that gives us the total cost. And then when we add it all up, we come down here to the bottom, and this is our eligible CIP cost. So that's going to be the numerator of the equation. It's really small on the screen. But our eligible CIP cost for water is $22 million. And when we divide that by our growth in service units, we come up with about $42,000. But Chapter 395 requires that we either do a detailed credit analysis or take a 50% credit. That's one of the requirements. And so in this situation, we have decided to take the 50% credit. And so our maximum allowable impact fee for water is $21,013. Thank you. I have it on another page in a bigger font. And so as a council, you may decide to charge anywhere from $0 up to the maximum allowable. We went through the same exercise on wastewater, and the maximum allowable impact fee with the 50% credit for wastewater is $9,943. This is just a summary of those calculations. We've got the eligible costs, the growth in LUEs, and then the 50% credit shown here. And then this is a graph showing kind of what some of our neighbors are doing and where Fair Oaks Ranch currently sits. We're in about the middle of the graph right here. And then if we were to go with the maximum allowable, we'd be on the far right side of the graph. This is our project schedule. Like I said, we've already met with your advisory committee twice. We obviously had their report earlier that recommending up to the maximum allowable. Today, we're not asking you to take any action. I'm here tonight to answer questions, to make sure you understand the information before we get to the public hearing, which is proposed to be on July 17th for the adoption. And I do want to mention that this date is important because there is currently legislation that has passed both the House and the Senate, Senate Bill 1883. It's sitting on the governor's desk for signature, last time I checked. And I anticipate that this will be passing. And so there will be changes coming to impact fees starting September 1st of 2025. And I'm happy to discuss that if we want to, but I just want you to be aware that there is legislation out there that'll be changing the process a little bit.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Changing the process or changing what we can have as impact fees?
Not changing what we can have as impact fees. So it's going to be changing the requirements of the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. 50% of your committee now will have to be from the development and building community. And right now that requirement is lower. We're also going to have to do an audit. Every time we update the impact fee study, you'll have to hire an outside financial firm that has not worked with the city in the past 12 months to do an audit of your impact fee accounts. And that will have to be held in a public hearing ahead of the public hearing adopting the updated fees. And then we will not be able to update sooner than 3 years. That's going to be, right now you can update as frequently as you want to. If you found that your land use assumptions or your CIP have changed, you could update before the 5-year time window. So now you cannot update. You have to wait at least 3 years. So that's something to keep in mind, that if we decide to go with less than the maximum allowable, we will not be able to easily change that over the course of the next 3 years. There's a couple other noticing requirements that are changing, but those are kind of the major changes that are coming.
That's something, Ruben, that we did consider at the last meeting. There was some discussion about it because we knew it was in the works. It obviously hadn't made it as far as it has now.
Right.
And so that was one of the reasons why the committee wanted to recommend going with the full allowable rate, because we may not be able to change that for a while.
So, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So these impact fees, at least from where we stand today, at approximately just under 15,000 would double in the proposal, correct? And the developers would be paying that for the new developments that come in?
Yes.
And do they pay that as they deliver the homes, or do they?
It's collected at the time of building permit.
At the permit?
Yeah, it's assessed at plat and collected at building permit.
Okay. So the effect of that, it goes into the price of the home that they're selling, correct?
Right, yeah, it'll be rolled probably into the mortgage.
And why are we so far out of the, far to the right when we're comparing to others? I mean, is there
Yeah, I think that
logic?
there's a couple of things that are going on here. So when you look at the graph, you can see at the bottom the years that these studies were last conducted, and the people on the far left of the graph, their studies are quite a bit older. The people on the far right, their studies have been updated more recently. And obviously, I think we all know that the cost of construction continues to go up and up and up. And the last time we studied this was in 2020, right before COVID hit. So that was a lot of things changed since then, and the cost of construction has really, really increased. You also don't have that much growth compared to some of the other cities to spread this cost out, among. So it's on a unit cost basis because we are looking at each project, what portion of the growth is utilizing that project, but it also, your projects are expensive and we just don't have that many homes that are being built in the next 10 years compared to some of these other cities.
I also wouldn't be surprised if, with the legislation that's out there, if these other cities are gonna update like we are considering doing. So that graph may end up looking a little different by the end of this. And we do have a very good committee that consists of developers and real estate folks and engineers and stuff like that. So, I mean,
They were very thorough.
I think we might even meet the requirement, the new requirement.
You may
So-
meet the requirement for
yeah.
50%. We'd
So-
want to obviously double check.
Right. So, I mean, we've got very good input on this committee.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Braunfels has 2 rivers that they have to deal with in all this, so it doesn't seem right.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then can I get a motion from council to approve a resolution setting a public hearing for July 17th, 2025 at 6:30 PM during the regular city council meeting?
So moved.
For proposed amendments to the city's land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and water and wastewater impact fees. And that was Jonathan? Scott? And a second? From Emily? Any other further discussion from council?
One comment, I know that this is well put together. I know probably looks like a lot of time went into it. And we're looking at sort of the demand side of things. At some point, I don't know how old our water study is, but I think we need to take a look at the supply side of things. So just want to put that out there.
Anybody else? Any other comments from council? With a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll move on to our next consideration item, which is item number 16, consideration possible action approve a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2026-35-year financial plan. And Summer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Summer Fleming, Director of Finance again. So for your consideration is a resolution adopting the city's fiscal year 26 to 35-year financial plan. This plan is a strategic tool that links our long-term goals to the annual budget, helping ensure financial stability and sustainable service delivery. The model is a flexible planning tool that projects financial outcomes based on specific assumptions. And over the course of 2 workshops, the City Council reviewed a baseline scenario and 5 alternatives for the general fund. Each scenario varied by tax rate, funding approach for drainage, use of unallocated fund balance, and operating reserve targets. And following that review and discussion, Council directed staff to proceed with Scenario 5, which maintains a 50% operating reserve, uses unallocated fund balance for one-time costs and to stabilize the tax rate, and funds the drainage CIP using debt. So while this plan is not binding and can be modified at any time, it provides a clear framework for anticipating future financial needs, aligning resources with city priorities, and for building the budget for the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget. The annual review process will ensure that the plan remains flexible and responsive to changing circumstances, allowing the city to adjust its course as needed. So staff does recommend adopting this 5-year financial plan as a proactive step toward long-term fiscal sustainability.
Any questions from council? Everybody good? I just provide a quick comment, Summer, and all the work that you and Julie have done to put this together, and your entire team. But over this is the third year, I think we've put a 5-year plan together. And from my perspective, what you have developed this year really provided us the capability to use it as a tool as we go into the budget development. So I just want to say thank you for all the effort and what you all put into this and developing something that's very useful.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? And from council, can I get a motion to approve a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2026 to 30 5-year financial plan? Jonathan and Dale. Jonathan made the motion and Dale seconded. Any other discussion from council? Motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you, Summer. The next item that we have tonight is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policies. Is this the last one, Jim?
Yes, sir. I look familiar? Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, Council, members of the public who are here. Jim Williams, Assistant City Manager, and before you tonight is the last batch of the omnibus update of the Personnel Policies Manual. Real quick, we're going to go through these items. It seems like a lot, but it's really just a bunch of quick cleanup things. These are the last items that were the lowest priority, so mostly just cleanup items in the policy. When this is the agenda for consideration items, I'm going to start with number 13 because number 1 kind of wraps it all up. I'll end up with that, and then number 6, the section 9.01, is an amendment to the policy that the council has just adopted. It's just a little cleanup thing we need to do. So we'll get started here. So. Chapter 13, again, general cleanup. We changed the name, recommend changing the name to the chapter to separation of employment because separations is very general. And it also clarifies which termination actions are voluntary or involuntary. So if you want an involuntary termination would be someone terminated for cause, a dismissal for cause. A voluntary termination would be a resignation. Each of those terminations have different procedures that we follow. It also clarifies how we're going to handle payment of wages and accrued benefits if an employee was to unfortunately pass away during service. There's things we need to do per Texas law, and the city attorney's office recommended that we put that in there, so we did. Chapter 15, again, general cleanup. It clarifies and standardizes what's going to be in our job description. It also matches that every employee has to match to a job description. We just can't hire people willy-nilly, so we're planning that out. It also adds in there to match our current practice, the annual performance evaluation standard, just memorializes that. Chapter 17, professional development, again, theme, general cleanup. It clarifies also what our wage and overtime rules are going to be for when an employee is traveling for the city. It also it clarifies how we're going to handle reimbursements for professional membership, and it also throws in there that it's all subject to appropriation by the council. Chapter 18 is travel and subsistence reimbursement. Again, general cleanup. It also clarifies that travel expenses, employees who are traveling need to pay attention to what the funding source of the funds are. Most of the travel is used general fund dollars, but if someone's using a grant or a contract, there may be specific terms in there to be paying attention to so we don't get in any trouble. It also clarifies what we're going to do for same-day, overnight travel-related expense reimbursement, how we're going to handle that. And then it also gets to like what is the most economical and reasonable method of travel. It defines that, so staff has good guidance. Back to number 1. So this is the kind of the close for the big update. Again, it's a general cleanup. It clarifies what we're going to do for procedure creation. So we have the personnel policies, but then sometimes for day-to-day operations, we may need to implement a standard operating procedure to kind of implement that policy. So this just clarifies how we're going to do that and sign off on anything that's supplemental to that. It also removes sections that are now covered in other sections of the policy. So if you read through the packet, you'll see a lot of lines out. Those things are already covered in other sections, so we just stripped it out so it was not duplicate. We also recommended adding in the policy terms that everything in the policy, everything that related to personnel actions, it's all subject to council appropriation. And then we also recommended adding, back last time I met with the council, at Chapter 7, we pulled that out, the benefits policy. It was this pretty long policy. Really, we boil it down to one paragraph. We just put that in here. Pretty simple. And then we also updated the reasonable searches and suspicions. So our policy, our 2006 policy says that we value employees' privacies, but we can inspect anything that you have on you at any time. The city attorney's office recommended you kind of loosen that up a little bit, because like your car is not, purses are not subject to inspection, but your desk is, your locker is, those kind of things. And then we clarified what banned weapons were. Basically, in our old policy, it says anything that has a probability of causing harm, like a weed eater, or maybe even that award that Ms. Merrill got, could be a weapon. It's like, no, we want to be reasonable with that. So it's basically instruments of combat where someone who's reasonable would say that's going to be used against us, like a knife, a big Bowie knife, or a gun, or something like that. Just being real careful with that. So. And then the last one is a recap. It's circling back on section 9.01, work during holidays. It's in the holidays section of the personnel chapter of the personnel policies. And what we're requesting is to change the non-exempt pay procedure for work during a holiday. So right now, we're doing just time and a half for holidays for employees who are working, non-exempt employees who are working on a holiday. What we're recommending is just to go to straight time pay, and then holiday, they get the holiday pay. The intention is that most employees who are non-exempt are already likely scheduled to have that holiday off and get that benefit. But every once in a while, we've got to bring folks in. For example, the 4th of July event that we're planning, there's about half a dozen non-exempt employees we're going to have work that day. So the intent is to just pay them for the holiday and then pay them for the straight time day, and so it evens out. It's similar to the 2184 patrol rule for holiday pay. The difference is that patrol just gets it automatically whether they work it or not because of the rotating shift schedule. It'd be too disruptive to schedule holidays. So with that, the next steps are we'll work to publish a clean version of the manual that aligns with our branding and style guides. We'll get it cleaned up real nice and get it published. We need to circle back sometime mid to late summer. There's a few cleanup things that we need to address. They're not showstoppers, they're not deal breakers, but we do need to address them. We'll be back with those. And then once we get that all done, we'll get into a regular maintenance and a regular training schedule so that we're not coming back 19 years later to do this again. So with that, that concludes the omnibus update of the policy manual. I'm happy to take questions.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
Are you doing physical books and online, or one or the other?
Yes, sir, both. We'll do a physical paper manual. We'll have that for reference. Let me back up. What we'll do is we'll publish in a PDF version. If someone wants to print that out or needs a hard copy, we can make that for you. And we'll also publish that on the webpage. There's a council resources tab on your webpage. We'll put that in there, right in there. And then for staff on our intranet, we'll publish it as an internal webpage so it can be easily searched. But yes, sir, we'll disseminate it in a few different areas.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I found a typo.
Yes. I'm not saying.
18.03.02, United States instead of United States.
Okay,
So,
we'll catch that.
catch that for you.
Thank you for the tip.
Anybody else?
Wanted to make sure Jim knew I read it. Well, I did.
I don't think there was a doubt that you were
Okay.
going to.
I was totally confident, Mr. Roden, yeah.
Anybody else here tonight have any questions or comments? So Jim, this completes this review, and you said there's some cleanup, I don't know, later in the fall?
Yes, sir. This completes the big push, and we'll come back later in the fall with I got a half a dozen or so little ones that we need to sort out. They're not deal breakers, they're not major issues, but we do need to address them.
Okay.
Yep.
And then after that, we just go into regular annual
As needed.
review? Okay.
As needed, yes, sir.
From council, can I get a motion to approve a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policies?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ruben. Any other comments from council? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you, sir. Move on to our last consideration item tonight, which is consideration and possible action to approve a resolution to appoint council members as member of liaisons to various boards, committees, and commissions. And I've got this item. And so as part of the packet, I have provided each year after the elections, we do reappointments of council members to our boards, committees, and commissions, just because of the possible change of the makeup of the council itself. And as part of this, I have provided a proposal for assignment of council members to various boards, committees, and commissions. That is located on page 244. It's also up on the screens now. We can go through them one by one and just confirm. You know, as we go through it, if you are an individual and you're assigned to a committee that you don't want to be a part of, please let me know. Or if you have interest in serving on a committee that you were not assigned to, please let us know and we can go through these. Once we go through them all, then we'll do a motion to approve the entire slate. So for the audit committee, I proposed Keith Roden, myself, and Dale Pearson. Any concerns? No. Branding committee, Dale Pearson, Scott Parker, and Jonathan Swark. And then the wildlife education committee, Ruben Olvera, Scott Parker, and Jonathan Swark. Emily to continue as our liaison to the CIAC. Emily to serve on the Court Security Committee. And then our Emergency Management Committee, Keith Roden, myself, and Scott Parker. Those are and when we do the resolution, these will be assignments. I've also listed the MDD. We did a designation for these, that these will be the individuals to be appointed, but they will not be appointed until the time later this year when we do all of the appointments for that, the MDD. And that was Keith Roden and Ruben Olvera. Any concerns? I know you're good. That's why you're here. Then with that, can I get a motion to approve a resolution assigning council members as members or liaisons to the boards, committees, and commissions?
So move.
Ruben, and a second. From Emily. And I apologize, prior to taking the motion, I didn't ask if there were any members here that had any questions or concerns with it. It's here as part of the meeting. No. Any other discussion from council? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. And that completes our consideration items for tonight. We do have several workshop items. And to kick it off, we have, well, really it's the budget. But Summer's going to run us through a budget introduction.
Yes, thank you. So this evening marks the first workshop for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And given the time since our last Budget 101 presentation and changes in council membership, I'd like to begin with a high-level overview of the budget process. This foundational context will help guide our discussions over the coming months as we work toward developing the budget. So a budget is a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide for staff, and a communication device for citizens and stakeholders. The budget reflects the goals and priorities of the city and outlines how the city will raise and spend money to achieve those goals. Revenues come from a variety of sources depending on the fund. The general fund relies heavily on property tax and to a smaller extent sales tax. Those two sources account for over 75% of revenues. Other sources in the general fund include charges for services, franchise fees from utility providers, investment earnings, grants, and other miscellaneous revenues, which is usually small. The utility fund is primarily funded through utility rates and fees paid by customers, in addition to grants and contributions and investment earnings. Now, property taxes are made up of two components. The maintenance and operations rate, called the M&O rate, funds the maintenance and operations of the city. Strategic and Capital Project Fund, and the Capital Replacement Fund, which is savings for the programmatic replacement of capital assets. The interest and sinking rate, called the INS rate, is levied to repay the city's debt obligations. So the M&O and INS rate combined equal the total tax rate. Utility revenues support the maintenance and operations of the utility, utility capital projects, and the utilities capital replacement fund. So this slide just shows the historical total tax rate of the city and how much is for maintenance and operations versus debt repayment. The tax rate has decreased over the past 4 years, driven by increased appraisal values and the city's commitment to prudent financial management. And this slide illustrates how Fair Oaks Ranch's property tax rate compares to those of surrounding cities. As you can see, our city maintains a competitive and lower rate to these surrounding cities. When considering the city's tax rate, it is important to take into account the overlapping taxes that our residents also pay. The city is situated in 3 different counties, and some residents are in Comal ISD. But in all locations, the city's tax rate comprises the smallest portion of a total tax bill. This chart is based on a $650,000 home value, which is about the average home value within the city, and the city's tax portion accounts for less than $1,900 per year. School districts usually account for the largest part of a resident's tax bill. So now we know where the revenues come from, but how do they get spent? This slide breaks down the operational expenses of each fund necessary to maintain the core services that we provide. So the budget process timeline begins in March and April with the review of the strategic action plan and 5-year financial plan, and then internally, staff begins building their departmental proposed budgets. Then in June and July, staff holds workshops with City Council to develop those budgets, leading toward adoption in September for the start of the fiscal year on October 1st. I won't spend much time on this slide, but it shows the 5 pillars of the strategic action plan, and that guides the long-term visions and goals of the city into actionable steps for staff. Now, the budget adoption process must follow Chapter 102 of the Local Government Code, which outlines a strict timeline and procedural requirements. Specifically, the budget must be adopted prior to October 1st, includes a public hearing, and be adopted by ordinance, which in Fair Oaks Ranch requires 2 readings. To ensure compliance, staff prepares a detailed calendar with key milestones. And once the budget is formally adopted, the city can levy taxes in support of that budget. Now, the property tax rate setting process begins July 25th when the county appraisal districts provide the city with certified tax rolls. These certified value reports are used to complete the state comptroller's tax rate calculation worksheet. So this worksheet calculates the no new revenue tax rate and the voter approval tax rate. These are then presented to council in August, at which time the city council sets a maximum tax rate to consider for the new fiscal year. And then in September, if the tax rate exceeds the no new revenue rate, a public hearing would be required, and the tax rate can then be adopted by ordinance. So we're always required to hold a public hearing on the budget, and we're required to hold a public hearing if the tax rate exceeds the no new revenue rate. Now, that no new revenue rate is the rate that would produce the same amount of revenue if applied to the same properties in both years. For example, if the city generated $7 million of property tax last year, it would take those same properties that were taxed, and using their new value, it would calculate a rate that would produce $7 million in the new year. But because this calculation is based on the total tax rate, not the individual M&O and INS rates, if the city's INS rate were to increase, then the M&O rate would have to decrease to stay within that no new revenue threshold. And this is difficult for a city to achieve if costs of service have increased. The voter approval rate is the tax rate that, if exceeded, the city would be required to seek voter approval, so we would have to go to an election. It equates to roughly the previous year's revenue plus a 3.5% increase. But if the city adopts a tax rate that's lower than the voter approval rate, that difference is calculated as foregone revenue, and it can be banked for 3 years as unused increments. So using unused increments would allow for the city to levy a tax that generated more than a 3.5% increase without triggering an election. And so on the tax rate calculation worksheet, the rates are called an unadjusted voter approval rate, which does not include unused increments, and then the adjusted voter approval rate, which adds in your unused increments, and so that way you know which rate would require an election. And then I just included our full budget calendar on this slide, but that concludes the presentation, and this overview really sets the stage, for our budget conversations to come. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? It's a good refresher. Thanks, Summer.
Sure.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? Okay, we're going to move on with Public Safety and Public Works.
Yes, I'll just do a brief introduction on the total general fund. But again, this will start the first budget workshop of the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. So I'll just do an overview of the total general fund proposed budget, and then we'll hear presentations from Public Safety and Public Works. So as of April 30th, preliminary freeze-adjusted taxable values are $2.89 billion. That's an increase of $167 million, or 6.1% over last year. Keep in mind that these values typically decrease slightly after protests are resolved, so the final certified value will likely be a bit lower. The city provides several tax exemptions, including a $5,000 homestead exemption, $50,000 exemptions for over 65 and disabled, and then a tax freeze on qualifying disabled homeowners. And then one of the largest exemptions mandated through the state is the disabled veterans exemption, and that significantly affects the city. So based on preliminary data, total exemptions amount to over $354 million, and the largest share does come from that disabled veterans exemption. Now, some key highlights for the budget. Property tax revenue is budgeted at a 3.5% increase over the 2024 levy, and sales tax is currently budgeted at 4% over the current year's estimates. Total operating expenditures are increasing 3.7% over the prior year's budget. That includes a 4.5% increase in personnel wages. But total expenditures, including capital and transfers, is actually decreasing slightly. The proposed budget includes the continued funding towards the replacement of city vehicles and equipment, and it maintains the operating reserve at 50% of operating expenditures. So with this budget, the unassigned fund balance is projected at $2.57 million. Operating revenues total $10.97 million. Operating expenditures are $10.25 million. And then after savings for future capital replacement and proposed capital outlay, the general fund shows a surplus of $259,748. Now, this proposed budget includes usage of restricted funds, some of which will be discussed in the next presentation, but most of that surplus supports the operating reserve to meet the 50% target, and then a little over $54,000 would be added to that unallocated fund balance. So that concludes the general fund overview. I'll turn it over to staff for department-specific budget presentations, starting with public safety. Are there any questions before we move on?
Everybody good? Questions from anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and neighbors here tonight and watching at home. I'm Todd Smith, your Chief of Police, and I'm here to present our proposed budget for public safety for fiscal year 2026. The proposed budget is $4,704,372. You can see the pie chart detailing the categories listing personnel at 65%, EMS and fire at 16%, services at 14%, supplies, maintenance, and operations at 3%, and capital outlay at 2%. The graph on the right shows the utility fund compared to the general fund, and the police department only has two items that share a cost with the utility fund, and that's dispatch services and the yearly fee for regroup. This next slide shows the changes to the budget from this year to next year in a bar graph for comparison purposes. Year-over-year budget is increasing 8%, and that's primarily in services for fire and dispatch. Dispatch has a one-time cost this year, implementing a new RMS, or records management system, that we share with Bernie Police and Kendall County Sheriff's Office. In future years, the cost will be reduced. Personnel is only increasing 1% due to our new personnel and their starting wage steps being lower than the higher steps of more senior employees. All right, you can see the highlights, which include increases in EMS and fire services, as well as those dispatch services, which are determined by contracts. Also included in minor equipment additions are the issuance of city cell phones for each officer to help them perform their duties with more efficiency and effectiveness. Next is patrol rifle accessories. Our current rifle inventory does not include slings to be able to carry these rifles or any lights for low light or dark conditions. The next item is portable radio equipment, and this is for some new shoulder microphones that are in desperate need of replacement. Followed by some new iPad cases. Our existing cases are in need of replacing, and we would like to replace with a case that also has a built-in keyboard to help officers type reports in the field. Currently, they are typing on an iPad screen, and we know the included keyboards will be a big help for them to complete reports. Finally, the department has two scheduled vehicle replacements as current units reach their mileage thresholds and are prepared for auction. The first replacement is a truck for the Criminal Investigations Division, or CID, which will offer improved efficiency compared to the current vehicle, particularly for transporting evidence and recovered property. The second is a truck to replace the current Tahoe command vehicle. This new truck won't require full patrol outfitting, helping to reduce the costs. The existing Tahoe, which is pursuit rated and offers significantly more space than the current Ford Explorer, will be reassigned to our patrol sergeants to share. Its larger capacity will better accommodate equipment such as ballistic shields, medical supplies, and other tools to help support field operations. And both vehicle purchases will be funded through the Vehicle Replacement Fund. The next slide mentions our restricted funds, known as LEOS funds. The current balance is $21,427. These funds are received annually from the state based on the number of officers that we have and can only be used for continuing education of our licensed officers. Included in our budget proposal is $10,000 from these restricted funds for specialized training. The next slide also refers to restricted funds, but these are from asset forfeitures. These funds have been on the books for several years and can only be used for law enforcement purposes. The current balance of this restricted fund is $43,275, and we've included $21,600 in the proposed budget to purchase red dot sights for our duty-issued weapons. From my research and experience with departments with red dot sights and where they are standard issue, I can confirm that they improve accuracy and performance in low light and dark conditions in the event our officers have to deploy their weapons to save a life. Thank you for your time and consideration. This proposal ensures our department that can continue to serve our community effectively while addressing critical needs. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Chief, I got to point out, your asks are not very, Chief, I've got to point out that your asks this year are very limited. There's nothing else the guys can come up with that are, I'm surprised, because we've heard things in the past that were considerably more. The,
This is what my audit is reflected is, and it's not just me doing the audit, it's all of our officers and having one-on-one listening sessions to ensure that their needs are heard. And this is what we've come up with to be fiduciarily responsible, as well as meeting any and all critical needs that we do have.
didn't mean to point out that we're not happy not to spend the money, but
Sure.
if you all have, just wanted to point out that if you have other needs, now's the time.
Appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This is a question, not a critique. Is there a reason some of the minor equipment, any or all of them, could they be paid from the asset forfeiture fund, or no?
Potentially. I'd have
Okay.
to look at the details because it's very specific on what we can use them for.
Okay.
But we could certainly look into that.
I was just curious.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Good. Chief, I had a quick question on the vehicles.
Yes.
And I understand no issue with the two trucks for the command and CID.
Yes.
But we're listing under equipment replacement fund. And are there other vehicles that we're turning in and that doesn't put the rest of your force at a challenge because we're turning other vehicles in to support?
Yes, we've
these?
actually had a waiting list to send vehicles to auction. So currently we have 5 that are ready for auction. So that leaves us 16 for our fleet. So we have plenty right now. I've looked at it from the standpoint if we were to have an all hands on deck emergency where everybody needs to come in, we have enough vehicles to be able to double up, have 2 officers per car, and to deploy wherever we need to in the city for whatever help is needed.
Okay. Any questions from anyone here tonight? Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
And Public Works, Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'll be presenting the proposed budget for the Public Works Department. This does include maintenance bill. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let me advance this. There we go. This does include maintenance, building codes, engineering, and planning, but it does not include utilities, which will be presented later in July. So bottom line up front, the total proposed budget for Public Works is $3,523,140. This represents less than 1% increase from the current year. Broken down by category, 55% of it's for personnel, 33% for supplies, maintenance, and operation, 7% for professional services, and 3% for capital purchases. Budgeted by division, you can see that engineering is the largest component. However, our annual street maintenance is funded out of engineering. That's followed by maintenance and then building codes. The Public Works budget is largely funded by the general fund at 86% and a smaller portion funded by the enterprise fund at 14%. And this chart shows just a comparison between the current year budget versus the proposed budget. The current year is in blue, and then the proposed budget is in green. As you can see, there's very nominal, if any, increases across the board. And as I mentioned before, the total proposed budget is an increase of less than 1%. There are a few changes in the proposed budget that I would like to highlight. The first is in street maintenance. We did put in a slight increase of $15,000 to implement Transportation Safety Advisory Committee recommendations. This could involve additional signage, striping, RPMs, delineators, or other improvements. In the area of professional services, we also made several changes. The first is a decrease of $30,000 for the GEC's budget. Now that we have an in-house city project manager, we're less reliant on our GEC, and we're reducing the budget to reflect that. The second is a decrease of $20,000 for the household hazardous waste event. Under the new franchise agreement with Frontier, no city contribution is required as the customers can schedule pickups directly with Frontier. So that's being removed as well. The next change is an interesting one. This is an increase of $28,440 for the rental of a restroom and shower trailer. This is the general fund portion after the split with the utility. Public Works staff has grown considerably since the maintenance barn was originally built in 1999 and can no longer, the existing toilet and shower facilities within the building can no longer accommodate staff. The plan is to lease a trailer and set it up next to the maintenance barn to provide those needed facilities. Associated with this, there is a recurring cost. The first year is the $28,000 that's shown, but recurring years are $18,000 per year. Now, I'll also mention that we'll probably see a SAP project request in the near future. The city would like to initiate the facilities master plan. This will help start planning for the expansion of future city facilities instead of paying some of these long-term lease costs. And then the last item under professional service is just some small increases to cover both the fire and health inspector contracts, as well as a small increase to our training budget now that we have an in-house city planner and in-house project manager. Moving on to capital purchases, this includes 4 items. The first is replacement of the vehicle for our code compliance officer. Right now, he's driving an old F-250 that was inherited from utilities. We would like to replace it with a Ford Ranger. This item would be fully funded by the Equipment Replacement Fund. Secondly, we'd also like to replace one of our old garage door openers over at our maintenance barn. Over the past couple budget cycles, we've been budgeting to replace 1 or 2 doors at a time, and this kind of continues that trend. The third item is the purchase of an asphalt patching machine, otherwise known as a hot box. This would provide several benefits for the city. First, using hot mix results in a much better repair than using cold patch. Secondly, when contracting to do road repair asphalt patches, it costs on average about $3,000 per repair. So as you can see, after about 16 repairs, this machine will pay for itself. And then lastly, this equipment would allow for the reuse of a lot of the asphalt millings that come off of our roadway project, potentially reducing the cost of the project by minimizing that disposal cost. And then the fourth item under capital purchases is the purchase of additional radar feedback signs, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. So previously, council requested that a prioritized list of radar feedback sign locations be brought back during the budget cycle. So using some traffic stop data from our police department, specifically from March 2022 to March 2025, we identified the top 5 locations in the city where traffic stops occur. And this includes both warnings and citations. You can see the prioritized list on the left and an associated map on the right. The first location is the 7200 to 7900 block of Dietz Elkhorn Road. That's basically Dietz Elkhorn Road from the intersection with the Parkway all the way to Ralph Fair Road. I would not recommend putting a radar feedback sign at this location at this time. We are getting ready to kick off the Dietz Elkhorn reconstruction project, and I would recommend holding on this location until after that project is complete. The second location is the 8,000 to 9,000 block of Dietz Elkhorn Road. This is basically Dietz Elkhorn Road from the 4-way stop by Van Rob to the Parkway. We've already installed the radar feedback signs at this location, so it's covered. The third prioritized location is the 8,500 to 8,700 block of Fair Oaks Parkway. This is on the Parkway, generally between Noble Ark and Calcalo. The fourth is the 31,400 block to the 31,500 of Meadow Creek Trail. This is basically kind of like in the middle of Meadow Creek Trail. And then the fifth is the 7,200 to 7,300 block of Pinnacle Lane. This is on Pinnacle Lane, closer to the Ralph Fair Road side. Now, in addition to these, there were several other locations that have come up during discussion or recommendation from the Transportation Advisory Committee, as well as discussions with City Council. Those include the Dietz Elkhorn Road and Old Fred Road intersection, kind of the west end of West Dietz. The other location is Fair Oaks Parkway near Front Gate, And then lastly, on Keeneland Drive near the intersection with Ventura and Battle Intense. So I guess if you don't count locations 1 and 2, there are 6 remaining locations on this list. Public Works does have 2 more sets of radar feedback signs. Remember, we did install that one on Dietz. So we have 2 more sets of radar feedback signs, and what I'd like to propose is to use that at locations 3 and 4. And then as part of this budget, Public Works is requesting to purchase 3 more sets of radar feedback signs, and the proposal is to put those 3 new radar feedback signs next year at locations 5, 6, and 7. I can also add additional set to cover location 8. That's just the addition of about $7,000 more to the budget. And then with that, I kindly request any feedback or direction in regards to the placement of the signs and then the quantity of signs to include in the budget. Thank you.
Grant,
Yes, sir.
are these all permanent installations, such as we have in the city
It'd be similar to the one that we recently installed on Dietz Elkhorn. That's correct.
now? Okay. And I know that you have the ones that are, I guess, battery operated that you use as you need, but you have just 2 of those, correct? Or?
Correct. Those are smaller, they're more portable, they can mount onto additional poles, right?
So is part of your ask going to be for additional portable ones as well?
Right now, the request is for 3 sets of permanent ones.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Grant, excuse me, when you say 3 sets, is it set 2?
Correct, yes, sir.
And then when you have them listed up here at that location, that's one on northbound side and one on the
Correct.
southbound side? Okay.
Usually the conditions that are conducive to speeding on one direction are usually the same conditions on the other direction. Yes.
Thank you.
Looking for questions and comments just on the speed radar signs or on everything that you've covered so far?
I'm open to any questions, sir.
So I'm on page 309 here on the right-hand side where you've got your budget by division and you've got engineering 54%, and you mentioned that road repairs were lumped in there. Is the money that we pay to contractors in that 54%? It is, okay, so
Yes,
I'm
it
saying
is,
it is.
yes. The majority of that funds budgeted for the annual street maintenance program are spent on contracts.
I would like to see that broken out because this is where I'm going with this. You know, for example, the fog seal machine that we've got, we're getting bids that are like 2 1/4 all the way up to 3 1/2 per square yard on fog sealing for us right in the city. And we're doing it probably about $1 a square yard, so we're way under that, right? And we have money that we're gonna spend on continuing to do that, even though we have a successful business model in-house. But I understand it's gonna take something to get it kicked off and get it going right. But, you know, there's probably $100 grand easy, just low-hanging fruit that we could snatch right there. And I'd like help identifying that in this 54%, if I could.
Help me understand your request.
I want to see the contractor, what we pay contractors to, let's start with fog seal. Let's make it easy and just do fog seal first.
Okay.
I want to see what we're paying, what we're scheduled to pay contractors to fog seal, and then I want to see what it cost us to fog seal. I'm guessing it's going to be around $1 a square yard. Was that far off? Maybe $1.10 or something?
I have to run the numbers, but you're probably close.
Okay. And that's, you know, let's start there, and then we can, if there's anything else that comes to mind, hey, Jonathan, or hey, council, we can do this in-house, and we could save this much money. That's what I'd like to see. Does that, did I lose you again?
Try to provide some context so that the total annual street maintenance budget as proposed is $900,000. That's composed of all the 3 or 4 different types of applications we have, fog seal, overlay, slurry seal, et cetera. We can give you the breakdown for this year. I'll work with staff to see if we have the fiscal year 2026 plan prepared yet. I don't know if we're at that point. But we can work on that because the breakdown is different each year based on our street maintenance model that's loaded into our OpenGov system, our asset management system. which streets gets which type of treatment on the life cycle will vary from year to year. So it's not going to be one amount each year for Fox Hill, et cetera.
I understand.
But we can work on that. The only other item related to that I think we also need to talk about is what is the capacity of our current staff to supplement that fog seal versus a contractor, i.e., can we do it all in-house with the staff that we have? But with that said, I think we can get you an answer. I just wanted to lay
Can we
that
do it
out.
all with the money that we would save doing it in-house? That's what I want answered overall. I mean, there's a business model here that seems to be successful, and if you're treating this as we're doing it for profit, of course you would take on more customers with the fog seal machine, even if you had to hire another employee to go out there and do it. So that's the question that I'm trying to dig into here.
I think we would want to get to, what is a rational minimum amount of fog seal we would want to do each year in-house and resource accordingly. I think that makes sense.
Yep. And then, not just fog seal. I don't want to stop there. If there's anything else that you guys think of that we could be doing more of, just let us know. I mean, I very seriously doubt it's because you bring it to council and say, let us save this money, and we just say no, So if there's anything else that you've identified there, please, by all means. And thank you, Grant.
Yes, sir.
Question. On the rental of the restroom shower trailer, you said 28,000 first year and then be less like continuing years. Is it possible and would it be cheaper just to expand or renovate rather than replace it with a rental?
I think that's the ultimate intent, but we'd like to go through the proper planning process first, which includes the facility master plan.
I mean, and now that I think of it, maybe you'd need a rental while you renovate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's right.
And then the prioritized locations for the radar feedback signs, is 1 through 5 in the order of most stops to less, or you just identify the 5 most areas of stops and that's what that list is? In other words, does number 1 have more stops than number 2, then 3, and so forth? Is it in that order, or are they just all lumped together?
No, they are prioritized in order.
So the
from
most
to
stops
least.
in the city is the 7,200 to 7,900 block of detail corn?
That's correct.
Okay.
I had the exact same question Ruben had about the renting of the shower facility or whatever versus expanding. Seems like if we did something more permanent, we'd get a pretty good return on our investment quickly rather than just continuing to rent each year. So, but it sounds like you guys already have a plan for that.
Yeah, I think that's just the interim solution until we get a more permanent solution in place.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? And so Grant, I mean, you had the questions on the budget. Did you get everything you needed on the radar feedback signs also? You kinda asked
So
for
it sounds like I
direction.
got concurrence on the proposed locations. What staff will probably do is bring back a resolution to kind of memorialize some of these decisions before we move forward.
Okay.
And then as far as the number of sets of radar feedback signs to include in the budget, it sounds like we're okay with 3 for now, and then we can always budget for more in the future.
Just to put a bow on it, as Grant mentioned, based on the current budget proposal, that would essentially cover us through item 7, or priority 7, if that's the priority that the council adopts, just so we're, and as Grant mentioned, that's what we would bring back for you to adopt as a priority so that we have direction as to where to put them.
Sure. Okay, any other questions for council? Questions from anyone here tonight? All right, got everything you need, Grant?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on to our last workshop item, which is a recap of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee submittal. Good evening, Carol.
Good evening, council, and thank you for keeping the best for last. On behalf of TSAC, we appreciate that, and thank you all for attending. Carol Van Zant, Assistant City Manager. TSAC Chair Al Schmidt and Vice Chair Chris DePecchi were unable to attend this evening, and they extend their apologies. But we do have Mr. John Wall in attendance with us, representing TSAC. So what I have for you tonight is a status update of transportation safety submittals heard at TSAC's February and May meetings of this year. The presentation includes 3 where no recommendations were made by TSAC, 2 recommendations that were made and now are complete, 6 recommendations that were made and are in progress, and lastly, a recommendation that was made that needs City Council direction. So, TSAC heard a request to reduce the speed limit on Deeds Elkhorn West between Fair Oaks Parkway and Old Fred Road due to traffic volume down to 30 miles per hour. Radar feedback signs were placed out in March. Results of the collected data suggested no speed limit change. At TSAC's May meeting, TSAC did not support the recommendation to reduce the speed limit. An alternate recommendation to reduce the speed limit from Square Gate to Old Fredericksburg Road was also not supported. The next request was to create an additional fire lane on Terra Vista and to compel the country club to designate no parking spaces to ensure fire and police vehicle access. The city's fire code official determined no additional fire lane was warranted as the existing fire lane meets the International Fire Code requirements. The official also met with the club to discuss the submitter's suggestion on enhancing their parking lot. Staff did repaint the existing fire lane on Terra Vista. The submitter was notified of all these actions. The next recommendation that was not passed, it was to place cautionary intersection ahead signs on Keeneland Drive before the Battle Intense and Ventura intersection. TSAC's motion to place cautionary signs on Keeneland Drive did pass at their February meeting. Staff did not concur with the recommendation. The request was resubmitted in May. The TSAC Rules of Procedure state a request cannot be reheard for 365 days from the date of TSAC's originally heard the request unless new pertinent safety information was provided or is provided. This recommendation was made and it is now completed. It involved actually 2 requests. The Battle Intense crosswalk was removed during the recent road reconstruction. One of the requests asked for the Battle Intense crosswalk to be reinstalled, and one request was not to reinstall it. TSAC's motion to reinstall the crosswalk as planned in the project scope and due to previous city council action on the original install passed. The crosswalk has been reinstalled. The next request they heard also was relative to Battle Intense, and it's to reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour from Fairway Valley and Keeneland Drive. TSAC's motion to receive radar feedback data to be collected and reported back to them passed. Staff anticipates presenting these results at the TSAC August meeting. Thus, this item is in progress. The second in progress recommendation is a request to reduce the speed limit on Nole Hasi to 25 miles per hour. TSAC's motion to reduce the speed limit was passed. City Council requested resident input and radar feedback data, vehicle counts and speed when it was brought to your meeting. Staff anticipates presenting results of citizen input and radar feedback data at the August TSAC meeting, as the item was deferred back to TSAC. The next submittal involved Rolling Acres Trail. This was a request to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles per hour. TSAC's motion to reduce the speed limit from Ammon Road to Silver Spur on Rolling Acres Trails and placing cautionary curve ahead signs did pass. The cautionary signs, as well as the radar feedback signs, will be in place no later than next week. Staff anticipates presenting citizen input and radar feedback results to the City Council in August. This slide depicts the intersection of Fair Oaks Parkway at Front Gate. We received 2 submittals for this area. One was a request for safety measures to be installed at Parkway and Front Gate intersection, and a request for a left turn lane on the Parkway northbound at Front Gate was the second submittal. TSAC's motion to paint a double yellow line and install reflectors in the medium, install intersection ahead warning signs, move the crossbar forward on Front Gate, and for City Council to consider authorizing a study to determine if a left turn lane is warranted did pass. City Council did concur and requested staff report back the measures' effectiveness that had been installed and requested staff to evaluate the feasibility of creating a turn lane without widening the pavement. Staff believes the safety measures are effective. To date, 1 accident, which was a fail to yield, has occurred, and no citations have been issued since all measures have been installed.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
The 1 accident is to date since the intersection was created, or the 1 accident was since the additional safety measures were put in place?
Since the safety measures were in place.
And do we know, were there more accidents before then?
I did not have that number. Do you by chance remember? We do not. We can get back to you on that. Now, regarding the left turn lane, staff does find that this cannot be done without widening both sides of the Parkway northbound. The current lane measurements are 24 feet and 26 feet. We determined this by using GIS imagery. The TxDOT roadway design manual requires a minimum turn lane width of 11 feet. Thus, we would be encroaching on the shoulder on the right side or in the medium on the left side. The Parkway is scheduled for a radar feedback collection, as Grant noted in his presentation. The city manager authorized an analysis inclusive of traffic volumes, a technical memorandum based on TxDOT or other criteria, using peak morning and afternoon hours, and to provide options with estimated costs that we will bring back for your consideration. This slide is just basically to let you know that, to recognize that TSAC has worked on it, council's worked on it, and I believe Grant has addressed this already with you, so with your permission, I'll move on. This final submittal was for a request to reduce the speed limit on 3351 or Ralph Fair Road to 45 miles per hour in the city limits. TSAC's motion to recommend City Council submit a written request to TxDOT requesting a speed reduction passed. As Ralph Fair Road is in the jurisdiction of TxDOT, that is the formal way to ask for a reduction of speed limit on their road. So staff tonight is seeking direction on presenting a resolution to you authorizing the city manager to submit a written request to TxDOT. And that is it. I'm sorry, that concludes it. We are done. On the direction being sought, if you all want to give us that guidance tonight, we're happy to bring back the resolution, or we can bring it back to talk some more at a future meeting.
I guess I'll just give my 2 cents if anybody
Sure.
cares. Okay. With the amount of traffic that there is, the last several weeks, I have been stuck at Keeneland waiting to turn onto Ralph Fair for very long amounts of time. And I personally think that if there is a reduction in the speed limit, that possibly could help that area right there. I think that's one area where we kind of have a longer stretch of road where people come off the light at Fair Oaks and they don't have to stop again until Ammon. So I think that would probably be the one of the only areas that has a pretty decent impact, and there is a lot of traffic that comes in and out of Keeneland, so I think that that would be beneficial. The other areas, I don't think reducing it would really even matter much because there are so many lights now. So I don't see a big problem with it personally.
Go ahead.
Right up from Keeneland, up Meadow Creek Trail, okay, coming around the curve, we see a lot of traffic and there is so much of a wait time. But I think that for right now, I would table this until we're done messing with the bridge construction, which we're looking at a year. The traffic is backing up anyway, and I think it's really going to be hard to get any kind of data to see really what the times are, and if it's really a speed issue or if it's a construction issue as well. I think that we would need to consider both of those. Moving TxDOT, I don't think is going to be an easy ask, and I think that we might see some resistance due to that construction as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
I would just point out that last time that we were here talking about reducing the speed limit was Nolehasi. And we told TSAC that we wanted to know who in that community was wanting the speed limit lowered, right? We wanted more research. So my question is, what's different about this? Do we have research here that we're all decide? I honestly want to know how this works and how I'm supposed to figure this one out. Is there research here that we're going off of, or is it just kind of a gut feeling, or, I mean, what's different about this versus Nolehasi?
That's a good point.
It's a good point, but I do think this is a much higher volume.
It is,
Road.
but last time the danger was setting the precedent that this is how this is going to be handled in TSAC, so we need to go ahead and clamp this down now. And here we are again. So I'm a little confused in place 6 over here, you know, so I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward.
Is the area lowered temporarily because it's in a construction zone? No?
Oh, right now, the
Yeah,
bridge? It
yeah.
is lowered. It's 45.
45 in the area of the bridge, yes.
Never mind. Well, I didn't know that,
So
so their signs aren't working.
Got a ticket yet?
So would changing it have an effect if it's already 45 in that area? Like, what would we be changing?
In
if-
that area, no, but the request was for the entire city limits of Fair Oaks Ranch to be reduced to 45 from
Which would be
55.
from Pimlico-ish to Ammon?
Ammon, essentially. yes.
I think Jonathan makes a good point. I mean, TSAC should be the one to provide the data behind that. I mean, we all kind of got a anecdotal data, but I think for them to do something similar would be more consistent with how we are thinking they should work, so.
Really not two-sided in the city until you get to this corner, because south of this corner, it's Camp Stanley on the right, right? So it's just Fair Oaks on the left as you're traveling north.
Right, that's true.
Correct.
From my perspective, I understand the point that Jonathan was making, and it's really what we ran into with Nola Hase. You know, if you have one individual that comes in and is requesting a speed limit change, and we've had this discussion, and you know, we look at it and we say, hey, it's a great idea, and then we make the change, but it's all based on limited data and limited participation. And so, you know, when we make these changes, are we making it for the betterment of the city? Some of these cases, I think council could make those changes. If we look at it and we can really define a safety issue related to it. And in some cases, we do need to get resident feedback on, you know, because they'll have a better idea of what's happening on those streets. And I don't know, in the case of Ralph Fair Road, I mean, once again, we have had accidents. I don't know how many accidents we've had within the city limits. Seems like most of them are down on the south end, but, you know, that may be helpful data to determine.
So I believe if we send the submittal to TxDOT, TxDOT is going to do their own study, which will include traffic accidents.
That's what I was going to ask.
They will do
is-
their own study.
Yeah, I was going to ask is, what is the process? And so if we request it to TxDOT, do they rely on us for data, or will they collect their own data?
They collect their own data, and by putting, if we move forward with requesting this consideration, we are on a queue, and it will, right now, they're running 4 to 5 months behind. They have that many requests that they're working on. So could we go out and get some citizen input and put that in the submittal? There's nothing in their application that says you can't do that.
Once they collect that data, do they give it to us to consider, or is the ball in their court and they take it from there and then they make the decision?
They do present that data to us.
Okay.
Because we would be.
Ultimately, it's TxDOT's decision.
Correct.
What we're asking for is that something that we or you as a council want them to consider?
But if I understand Jonathan's point of wanting data, but if by doing the submittal, we're going to get the data, then why not leave it up to TxDOT?
Correct, and I can clarify with TxDOT if it includes citizen input, if that's what you would like, but I don't believe it would. I've never known TxDOT to.
More so what I'm looking for is, how am I supposed to interface with TSAC? Because at Nole Hasi, right, it was split vote, and we didn't change the speed limit because we wanted, okay, here's why we're doing this, TSAC. We want you to bring it to us in this specific way, all packaged up exactly like this. And now here's this one again, so am I supposed to say no TSAC because it's not packaged up in this specific way, just like we talked about last time? Or are we just kind of deciding to let somebody else decide? Or I'm genuinely confused. And apologies, I should have brought this up beforehand. So I'm in the dark here too, but.
So I think if this is just a request to TxDOT
I
to
understand
do
that.
their study.
Fully understand.
They will come back with us with their study that says, yes, it's warranted,
I
no, it's
absolutely
not.
understand that.
If they say it's warranted, we would come back to you with an ordinance reducing the speed limit.
I fully understand. Yeah, that's not where I'm confused at. Where I'm confused at is where our decision-making is supposed to come from in this. And I'm looking for more council
So I
guidance here
think
than
maybe
anything.
I don't know if I'm on. I think maybe is your confusion, hey, TSAC, I need for you to go and get all this information first and then come back to us, and then we'll consider it, and we're not doing that in this case?
That's what we did last time.
Right.
So Nole Hasi, right, I was in the camp that was, okay, let's lower the speed limit, but the no's had it, right? So we did not lower the speed limit. And the reason was
Right.
because of the missing data that we
Right.
needed to, and I agreed with that. You know, on principle, you're right. We should at least have some kind of background there so that we can make an informed decision rather than just a gut decision. Yeah, you know, I feel like it should be lower.
Right. So I think the difference here is we don't have a TxDOT to go to, so
I
we are the
understand.
only authority on that. So it sounds to me like we still will be kind of doing that same process by making this request, because we're still gonna have to pass the ordinance. So we're essentially saying, hey, go do this study, tell us if this makes sense. They go do the study, come back to us and say, yeah, it makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense. And if it's yes, then we still have to pass the ordinance.
Oh, so they won't just lower it?
No.
So once we request it, they'll say, hey, it looks like we could lower it if you want to, and then we say,
Correct.
okay, then.
Yeah, so
That-
it's
sorry.
just an added step, it
Yeah,
sounds like.
that's my understanding when I talk to TxDOT is they will present us with their report, and they will say, yes, it's warranted, or no, it's warranted.
And
I can clarify that to ensure.
Act on it. They'll
and
just
not
let
act
us
on
know
it.
and say, do you want us to act on it?
Correct.
Okay.
And part of the collecting data on Nole Hasi was, other than citizen input, was putting out temporary radar feedback signs to
Correct.
collect data. I don't think we can do that on Relfair Road. And so I don't, as a city, I don't think we can do anything to collect raw data on that stretch of road. So we'd be relying on TxDOT anyway.
Correct, correct. Yes.
just to clear up and for my edification, can we by ordinance change, if TxDOT says it's okay, we have that authority to change the speed on a TxDOT road?
Yes. By that study, they provide us the permission. That's what we've already done when it came to the school. They had to do the study. We said there's a school going in. We passed an ordinance. Because our ordinance is how the police enforce the traffic in that area.
Okay.
Without the ordinance, they wouldn't be able to enforce it.
So,
But they have to give us permission because it's their road.
Okay.
Yeah.
so really,
Process.
the real question is, TSAC wants to ask the council to allow a request to TxDOT to get the data so that we can come back and make a decision. So that's what TSAC is asking us to approve a request, basically.
Correct.
To TxDOT.
Correct.
Versus us requesting TxDOT to lower the 45. We're asking TxDOT to give us the data. We're considering lowering it to 45. We need this information. Is that effectively what we're doing here?
Correct, and in defense of TSAC, it was staff's recommendation because we talked TxDOT and said, what is the process? You own the road.
Okay.
So when we went to TSAC, we said a written request has to be made to TxDOT to be placed on the queue for consideration of lowering a speed limit or changing a speed limit.
Okay.
Knowing that they don't have that authority to do that, they said, we would like you to go to council and ask whether they would like to submit an official request.
So Jonathan, I think this is in line with, I think is now consistent with what we said with Nolahasi. They can't get to that unless we put a request in for information, basically, to TxDOT. So I think it's in line, way I'm hearing it, now that we've kind of worked through
The
it.
way it was marketed first kind of wasn't, but it's now evolved to
Right.
something where we understand what it is. But I would for sure like to never be confused again on this, you know. Next time I have a package and it's, because I'm all for TSAC, you know, doing their thing. We created this thing to go do the job, so let them do their job, you know. But I don't want to see something that they want done die again for whatever reason. So make sure that next thing that they have has whatever data we requested on Nolahasi. Just have them all go back and rewatch that council meeting so that they can all figure out exactly what they should put that's going to, you know, get everybody on the same page.
Absolutely, and that was our goal, and that's what we plan to do, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if that is the process where we're merely asking for data and we're going to get that data and then later we can actually consider whether to do it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. Doesn't cost us anything?
Yes.
It does cost us?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you said it
Doesn't-
doesn't cost us
doesn't-
anything.
okay,
No, I appreciate,
yeah.
no, TxDOT does it as part of their purview.
Yep.
Yeah.
Easy enough.
Okay.
Okay.
And just for clarification, the entire city limits, or do you want just from Fair Oaks Parkway to entire city limits? Perfect. I think consistency is good.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? Questions from anyone here tonight? All right. Well, that completes our workshop items. And we'll move on to reports from staffing committees. And we have one item left, which is looking at filling our boards and commissions and committees for 25-26.
Technically, this is the last item. So, as part of our annual, oh, by the way, Christina Pachocchio, City Secretary. As part of our annual board and commission appointment process, we have a structured timeline to ensure transparency, community engagement, and adequate time for council's consideration. Below is a brief overview of key dates and steps in this year's appointment cycle, beginning June 6th, tomorrow, and concluding with new terms starting on October 1st. So tomorrow, the city will have its kickoff where we'll notify any of our existing incumbents whose terms have ended. We'll post the open positions on the city website, and we'll launch a social media outreach to promote the vacancies and encourage participation. August 1st is the application deadline, and that's when any and all people interested in applying, including the incumbents, must provide their applications by August 1st. August 14th, council will take action to appoint incumbents seeking reappointment and to decide on the selection process for any remaining vacancies, whether you'll do interviews or direct appointments. August 25th through the 12th of September, we'll do interviews if that's what council desires. September 18th will be our council meeting date where we will appoint those selected. And September 22nd through the 26th, we'll have an orientation and training for all the new appointees or returning incumbents. And October 1st, their new term will begin. And this is the similar process that we've done over the past couple of years. I just wanted to provide an overview. Does anyone have any questions?
All good? Thanks, Christina.
Okay, thank you.
And any questions from anyone else here tonight? All right, we've already done the CIAC semi-annual report. So that does complete the items that we had on the agenda for tonight. Move on to requests and announcements. Do any council members have any announcements that they'd like to put out? No? I have two announcements. City's already put out the information, but Fair Oaks Parkway, the northbound lane, will be closed 9 through 13 June next week. And this will be for the mill and overlay project that's being conducted in that area. There will be a detour around the area that really routes you up through the Windermere area. I'd say if you can avoid the area at all costs in the northbound lane, probably best to do that. But it will be closed starting Monday morning through Friday for the mill and overlay project on the northbound lane. Second announcement I have, Fair Oaks Ranch Homeowners Association along with the City of Fair Oaks Ranch is hosting an oak wilt workshop, and that is on Saturday, June 7th, this Saturday. And it will start at 10 a.m. and it will be at the Spring Creek United Methodist Church. The Texas A&M Forestry Service is there. They're going to provide information on oak wilt. Our environmental team will be there. They'll provide aspects from the city on what we do as part of oak wilt. Encourage all residents to come out if you got questions on oak wilt. Scott, anything else?
No announcements, but a question, Mr. Mayor. At the risk of reopening this can, I want to make sure I understand the direction from the last workshop item regarding Ralph Hill Road. Do you want us to, I'm looking for consensus, but do you want us to bring back a resolution that will request TxDOT consider reducing the speed limit?
That's what I understood.
We'll bring back a resolution. Thank you.
Does any council member have any items that they'd like added to a future agenda? All right. Christine, anything I missed? Anything we need to go back,
No, sir.
cover? Scott, anything from your perspective?
Nothing further.
I have the time now is 9:40, and we are adjourned.